What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing part 2 in the highly requested series of What If Deku Was Gojo Satoru from Jujutsu Kaisen. Thank you again for all the positive comments and the likes I've been getting on this series, and at the time of this recording we're almost at 260 subscribers, which means we're almost at our goal of 300 subscribers, which is be amazing. I'm so happy in this short amount of time we could grow so fast that we are. Because a few weeks ago, I remember just hitting 100, and it just means so much. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh yeah, before I forget, we now have a Discord. So join it. It's a good time, you know. We only have 8 members so far, and it's been really cool. So you guys should really join it. You know, you get to talk to me and some more of my YouTube friends, and some more of my other supporters that might have joined early. So again, thank you for all the people who already joined the Discord, and make sure if you haven't joined already, I'll leave a link in the description. But yeah, after further ado, cue the intro. Now, we have a time skip of 10 years since the last time we seen the two, and unfortunately for Bakugo, their friendship hasn't changed. Well, there used to be friendship. Izuku barely talks to, Gojo, my bad. Gojo barely talks to Bakugo, and the times that he does talk to him, it's because they have to work together on a project, or they just see each other outside of school or in the hallways, where Bakugo would try to say hi, and Gojo on most times would ignore him, but on some few times he would give him a nod, or he would give him a wave, and then he would be off with his business, not giving Bakugo any of the time of the day, something that still was unusual to him, since just years ago they were best friends. They were brothers. And now he feels like he lost a brother. Something that hurt the young boy more than he could ever imagine. Him feeling like he lost one of his best friends. Well, maybe his only best friend that he ever had. But because of this, Bakugo seeked out to get much stronger, so he can get the approval of his old best friend, now a one-sided rivalry, something like how Naruto and Sasuke had, on where Naruto kept on trying to become Sasuke's rival, even though Sasuke was clearly ahead of him at that point. But like I said, because of this, his explosions got much more powerful, and he also gained a lot more skills. I would say that his explosions are on the level of internship Bakugo, which is pretty good compared to the rest of the class at this point. And well, it's very strong. Well, a lot stronger compared to the old Bakugo that we saw when the series just started. Now, we skip back a few years. To be exact, it was up until a few weeks after of the events of the first part of the story, as we see Izuku in his class, well, with the rest of his classmates. Now, they're doing their recess time, and since it was raining outside, all of the students are forced to have a recess inside of their own classrooms. As we see in Izuku's class that everyone is playing around except for Izuku, as he's seemingly staring into the infinite voids of reality, if you would say. As we see 3 boys walking up to Izuku's desk, as one of them, who seems to be the head honcho, slams his fist on the desk and says, "Hey, freak, why don't you ever try to make friends? Or, I guess, you think you're too better for us, don't you?" As Izuku is seemingly ignoring them. As one of them tries to hit Izuku, as Izuku grabs his fist and says, "Can you just leave me alone?" As he pushes it away. as the guy didn't really like this, since when he would bully other people, they would just let him hit him and until he seemed that they had enough. But he was special. He didn't really care who he thought he was and what popularity he had in the class. He didn't let him do whatever he wanted to him, which angered him as he said, "Get him," as the two came from behind, as these two already had their quirks. One had the ability to stretch their limbs, as one had wings that grew on his back that allowed him to fly. As they ran and they tried to go behind Izuku, as I said, as Izuku gets hit by one of them because he was trying to deal with the other, as he caught one of their fists as the other hits him, as he starts to get beat up. As you can say, why is Izuku getting beat up? Isn't he supposed to be a lot stronger than them? Yes, indeed he is a lot stronger than him, but his parents told him not to do fights, and if you would get into a fight, then you'll get into a lot of trouble at home, since violence isn't the answer. Something that he tries to emulate, even if he has to get a few scars. Something that isn't too smart, but these things will all change very, very soon. As Izuku has been hit in the eye a final time, as he starts to feel pain, as he holds up his hand, as he puts in a certain hand gesture that we can see if you read the manga or if you watch the show. The hand gesture of Gojo's infinite void. As when the boys look up, they are no longer in their classroom. They're all together, yes, but in a totally different environment. This environment was something very weird. It was completely white, but all of a sudden, each of them got hit with not physical attacks, but a strand of information that overloaded their brain that caused them to pass out. As when Izuku opens his eyes and lowers his hand, seemingly canceling out his infinite void, he looks up to see the boys, and everyone no longer the same. He no longer sees them as people themselves, but he sees them all as energy. As the easier they are to see, the more energy they have. But the harder they are to see, the less energy they have. As he looked around, as he can see almost everyone. He can see people through buildings, as this started to hurt his eyes, as it started to overload his brain, as he started to scream out in pain, as he started to say, "Make it stop! Make it stop!" As his eyes started to see more and more and more until he passed out. As when Izuku comes to it, he's in the hospital with his father and mother by his side. As Inko sees that he's awaking, as she runs up, as she gives him a hug, and she says, oh Izuku, you had us so worried." They said that some people in your class said that you were fine, and then you started screaming, and then you just passed out. As when the school called us, we came as quick as we could. As Hiyashi says, "You okay, champ? How's the head?" As he says, "It's fine, but it still hurts a little bit." As he rubs his eyes, as his eyes open to see the same thing that he saw before he passed out. But everything is a little more clear. As he continues to rub his eyes, thinking that maybe it's just foggy, as Inko says, "Honey, what's wrong? You seem to be rubbing your eyes a lot." As she chuckles, as he says, "Well, it's hard to explain, but I can try my best. It's kind of like My eyes don't see as they used to see, as he said. Oh, how so? Well, it's kind of like those old movies that me you used to watch, Dad. You know those, what they're called, G.I. Joe people, on how they used to use the thermal goggles to see people at night. That's kind of like how my eyes see now. But I can no longer see like how I used to see, and how I could see the actual body figure of the person. It's more like I can see the overall outline with some weird levels that are going by their head and some weird aura that's surrounding them. As Inka looks at Izuku and says, well, maybe, honey, that might be your quirk. Some weird vision thing. As he says, maybe, that would be pretty cool, but hopefully I'll be able to turn it off. As his headaches start to come back, as he starts to say, ow, they're coming back, as he starts to rub his head. As we flip to a few days after this, when Izuku is let out of the hospital. It's now time for Izuku's scheduled appointment with the Quirk doctor, as the whole family arrives. As the Quirk doctor says, well, how can I help you? Well, like you would know, we think our child has a quirk and we would like for you to test it. As he says, oh, okay. Before I can test it, can you please give me some information about this child's quirk or possible one? As Inko looks at Gojo, as she says, well, Gojo, I guess you'll be the best to explain what you see. As he opens his eyes, as he says, well, to be frank with you, my eyes don't see how they used to see. Oh, how so? Well, like I was telling my parents, I'm going to use the same analogy, but not in the complete way. It's like how when people use thermal goggles to see at night, how they can see the outline of the body's heat, which allows them to see a body figure. But other than just that, I can see this weird aura that everyone has the different levels of, like how you have a different one than mom and dad, and how mom has a different one than dad. As Dr. Ujiko says, oh, that's very interesting, as he starts to write it down. As he looks over to Inko and Hayashi and say, well, if I can run some more tests before I make a final conclusion, it seems like your son might have some sort of vision quirk. But Inko says, well, that's not it. As she looks to Izuku, as he says, well, I have some more parts of my quirk that I'll also like to talk about. As he says, oh, well, keep on going, kid. As he says, well, it was a few days ago when these guys were picking on me. As I put my hands in this sign, as we were all seemingly transported into some weird area, and then I just saw them pass out. As he says, well, that's very interesting. We'll have to run some tests on this as well. In the meanwhile, you guys should make yourself comfortable, because this might take anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour and 10 minutes, depending on how willing the child is to work with us, on how complex the things that we need to work on the child is, and just about how many things that we need to run on the child. So just make yourself at home, and we'll be right back. As Izuku and the doctor walk through the door into this huge training facility, as he sees other doctors waiting for them, as Dr. Ujiko says, well, here we are, kid. Here's where we're going to be testing your quirk. As some of the other doctors in training come up to Dr. Ujiko and said, well, what do we have here? Well, this kid seems to have two parts of his quirk. Interesting, says one of the doctors. as Dr. Ujiko says, well, if I can remember this completely, he said that he can see like thermal vision, like he can see like the body warmth of the person and objects, and not only body warmth, but he can just see objects like real fuzzy. Well, not really fuzzy, because he says he can see it really clearly, and it's a lot better than how he would actually see. Wait, I think I might be mixing this up with another person. Dr. Ujiko says, one of the longtime vets, you really need to start writing things down so we don't have to deal with this all the time. As Dr. Ujiko says, yes, thank you for your advice. I'll try to work that in to my work habits. Oh yeah, my bad for that. Let me rephrase this. He seems like he can see people's quote-unquote energy. As for one person, it might be stronger than the others. I'm assuming he can see the power that people have with his eyes, as well he can see through objects apparently, and he can see through the people into very far distances away, and he could also see their energy. But he also mentioned that it seems to be that people that don't have as much energy aren't seen as well with people that have stronger energy. As they said, well, noted. So what's the second part? Well, this is going to be very interesting. It seems like he has his own physical plane that he can make, or a pocket dimension, that when he puts up a certain hand gesture, he sends people to. As they say, very, very interesting. They all look towards Gojo and say, well, kid, you might have some promise after all. Well, show us what you got. But in one person's mind, this is a very, very different ideas that he's thinking. And the main doctor that has been working on Gojo, well, he's thinking, Master All For One, I might have a new and powerful quirk for you after all. Something that will help you complete your goal of ruling this world. But guys, this is where we're going to be ending part 2 of What If Deku Was Gojo. Hopefully you guys really enjoyed this part, and hopefully it guys met your standards, and hopefully you guys just enjoyed it. Thank you again for all the positive comments and likes I've been getting on my past series, What If Deku Was Megami, and What If Deku Was Toge Inumaki. Thank you again. Hopefully you guys enjoy. But after further ado, it's Zero, and I'm out. Peace.